My name is Margaret Hill. I am 58 years old, and for 38 of those years, I have shared a bed, a name, and a life with Arthur Hill. In our small, affluent suburb, we were considered a landmark. We were the Hills, a name that suggested something solid, unmoving, and elevated. People looked at us and saw a blueprint for success. They saw the way Arthur held the door for me, the way I straightened his tie before every dinner party, and the way we laughed at jokes we had both heard 100 times. We were an example of endurance in an age of disposable things. They did not know that the foundation had turned to dust 2 years ago. It happened on a Tuesday. It wasn't a dramatic discovery involving private investigators or lipstick on a collar. It was a glitch in the mundane. Arthur was in the shower, and his phone, usually a black mirror of secrets kept in his pocket, lay face up on the nightstand. It vibrated with the persistence of a heartbeat. I picked it up, intending to silence it. The screen bled blue light into the darkened room. I'm still wearing your scent, counting the hours until Thursday. Love you, C. The world didn't explode. The walls didn't crumble. Instead, the air simply left the room. I stood there, frozen, watching the words burn into my retinas. C. Not a business associate, not a spam bot, someone who wore his scent, someone who counted hours. I heard the water click off in the bathroom. With a steady hand that surprised even me, I placed the phone back exactly as it had been. When Arthur walked out, smelling of sandalwood and steam, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, smoothing the wrinkles in my nightgown. "Everything okay, Maggie?" he asked, his voice warm and familiar. "Fine," I said, "just thinking about the anniversary." That was the night the Margaret Hill he knew died. The woman who replaced her was a masterpiece of performance art. For 730 days, I lived with a ghost. I watched him eat his morning toast. I listened to him talk about his real estate firm. I felt his hand on my back as we walked into church. Each touch felt like a brand, a hot iron of hypocrisy. I did not scream. I did not cry, at least, not where he could hear. I realized quickly that a confrontation would be too small. If I told him that night, we would have had a messy divorce, a few months of gossip, and then he would have moved on to sea with a clean slate. No, Arthur loved his reputation more than he loved me. He loved the image of the great man. To truly leave him, I had to let him finish building the pedestal he intended to stand on, only to pull it out from under him when the audience was largest. We were approaching our 40th anniversary, a celebration of our total time together, including our courtship. It was to be the social event of the season. Our children, Sarah and David, were flying in with the grandchildren. Our friends, our business rivals, and our local community would all be there. Arthur planned it with the precision of a military campaign. "Nothing but the best for my Margaret," he would say to the caterers, his arm around my shoulder. I would smile, feeling the cold void in my chest expanding, and agree that the vintage champagne was a lovely touch. The weeks leading up to the gala were the hardest. My daughter, Sarah, sat with me in the kitchen one afternoon, looking at old photographs for a slideshow. "You and Dad are so lucky," she whispered, her eyes misty. I hope Mark and I look like this in 30 years. I looked at a photo of us from 1989. I looked happy. I looked safe. I felt a sudden, violent urge to tell her the truth, to warn her that safety is often just a well-maintained fence around a ruin. But I stayed silent. I patted her hand and said, "It takes a lot of work, darling, more than you know." At night, the bathroom became my sanctuary. I would turn on the shower to drown out the sound and let the tears come. I would grip the edge of the sink until my knuckles turned white, staring at my reflection. I watched the lines around my eyes deepen. I saw the silver in my hair. I wasn't just losing a husband, I was mourning the woman who had believed in him. "I will not beg," I told the mirror. "I will not break." The evening of the anniversary was breathtaking. The ballroom was draped in cream silk and lit by 1,000 candles. The scent of lilies and expensive perfume hung heavy in the air. I wore a dress of deep navy, the color of the ocean at midnight. It was elegant, structured, and felt like armor. As we stood at the entrance, greeting a line of 200 guests, Arthur was beaming. He looked younger than his 60 years, energized by the adoration of the room. He kept squeezing my hand, a gesture of affection that now felt like a shackle. "You look beautiful, Margaret," he whispered in my ear. "Tonight is a night no one will forget," I replied. He thought it was a compliment. Dinner was served, the wine flowed. The slideshow played a flickering history of a lie. There we were on a beach in Maui. There we were at David's graduation. There we were, smiling, smiling, always smiling. Finally, the room went quiet. Arthur stood up, clinking his crystal glass with a silver spoon. The light caught the gold of his watch, a gift I had given him for his 50th. His speech was a tour de force of oratory. He spoke of our early years, of the lean times and the triumphs. He called me his North Star, the anchor of his soul, and the secret to his success. He was charming, self-deprecating, and utterly convincing. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "To Margaret," he concluded, raising his glass, "the woman who stayed." The applause was thunderous. I stood up slowly. The room felt vacuum-sealed. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the distant clatter of a fork. I held my glass, not of champagne, but of water. I needed to be clear. "I want to thank my husband," I began. My voice was steady, projecting to the back of the hall, "for 35 years of marriage, and for always teaching me the value of patience." A few people chuckled softly, thinking I was making a joke about his stubbornness. "He has taught me how strong silence can be," I continued, "and how much one can learn when they stop asking questions and simply start observing." I saw Arthur's brow furrow slightly. He shifted his weight. "For the last 2 years, I have lived with a profound gratitude for the truth, even when the truth is a cold, sharp thing that you find on a phone screen at 2 a.m. A ripple of unease moved through the front tables. My daughter's smile dropped. Arthur's face began to lose its color, the red wine flush replaced by a sickly gray. I have learned that trust is not a building. It is a breath. Once it is gone, the lungs of a marriage simply fail. I want to thank Arthur for showing me that a man can call you his anchor while he is busy sailing on another ship. The silence was now absolute. It was the silence of a car crash the split second before the metal screams. I am grateful for the lessons, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried further than a shout. To honesty, to choices, and to the courage to finally walk away. I didn't drink. I set the glass down on the white tablecloth with a deliberate thud. I looked at Arthur. For the first time in 2 years, I really looked at him. He looked small. The great man had shriveled inside his expensive suit. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He knew exactly which night I was talking about. He knew the sea I had never named. I turned. I did not look at my children, for I knew the pain in their eyes would undo me, and I had to be strong for what came next. I walked through the center of the ballroom. The guests parted like the Red Sea. I heard the whispers starting behind me, the frantic, delicious hiss of scandal. Margaret. He finally found his voice, but it was thin and cracked. I did not stop. I pushed through the heavy oak doors and into the lobby. I didn't go to the coat check. I didn't need my wrap. The fire inside me was enough. Outside, the night air was biting and crisp. My car was parked in the valet lot, already packed with the 3 suitcases I had smuggled out of the house over the last week. I handed the valet my ticket. He looked confused by my haste, but brought the car around. As I drove away from the Starlight Room, I looked in the rearview mirror. The lights of the gala were fading. For the last 2 years, I had felt like I was underwater, holding my breath until my lungs burned. Now, as the city limits passed behind me, I rolled down the window. The wind rushed in, cold and violent and wonderful. I took a breath, a real one. Sometimes, a marriage doesn't end with a whimper or a bang. Sometimes, it ends with a woman simply deciding that she has played her part long enough. The play was over. The curtain had fallen. And for the first time in 35 years, Margaret Hill was going home to a place that didn't exist yet, but would be entirely her own.